Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 78. And today we're going to be talking about Fintech and Web3 and how together they're really ushering in a whole new era of global finance and really new possibilities in the creator economy and really the broader economy for sure, internationally. So thank you for joining. My name is David Krome. I'm the host. I go by Krome in the metaverse. And we're really excited to be on episode 78. We don't have an interview today, but we're going to be looking again at the topic of fintech and Web3. Basically, what I'll be sharing today is actually a presentation that I gave at St. Lawrence College, which is a college in Canada. I gave the presentation remotely. It's going to be kind of a more trimmed down version of the presentation, but really just kind of looking at the intersection of Web3 and fintech. You know, blockchain technology kind of falls under the umbrella of fintech, which is financial technology, for those who don't know. You know, your PayPals, your Venmos, all these things kind of fall under fintech, and as does blockchain and cryptocurrency more broadly. But before we get into that, I really want to also just take a minute to look at the show, look at Web3 Warriors, kind of what we've been doing up till now, episode 78, and what we're planning to do kind of into the future. So, you know, as you might know, or you can probably tell, this really started out as a bit of a passion project for myself, coming from Clubhouse, coming from the Dream Conduit DAO, which is now unfortunately been shuttered. You know, we were always having conversations about the technology, about NFTs, about the blockchain, about the impact of cryptocurrency, about the possibilities in the on-chain metaverse, and basically, which is the metaverse being built on the blockchain, which has all kinds of real world value assigned to digital assets. So all of these conversations were very inspiring, but often, you know, a very crowded stage of people with all kinds of different perspectives. And so I thought, you know, it'd be great to be able to have one-on-one conversations, or even a conversation with a team, you know, that's representing a specific project, and being able to kind of get in depth and talk about it in a more nuanced way with really no time limit. So that's what inspired Web3 Warriors, the podcast. But I also, you know, if you've looked at what we're doing on Twitter, as well as what we're trying to do in the metaverse, you know, you'll see that it's more than just a podcast. You know, we're really trying to be a collection as well of NFTs to highlight artists and creators, and builders, developers that are just doing inspiring things on the blockchain, which of course I find nothing more inspiring than really taking art and creating a way for yourself with your art. You know, I always find that inspiring. So Web3 Warriors has NFT collections on Ethereum, Solana, and Tezos. And, you know, we've been investing in that, basically investing in the art, investing in the technology, more so than investing in marketing or really trying to take the podcast alone to, you know, some higher level through, you know, paid marketing and ads and all of that. No, that has not been a priority. But as we look to kind of transition into the future, you know, we're definitely looking at building out the team. We're looking at having more engagement in the metaverse, more engagement with the community, and more opportunities for people to take part. So that might look like some more Web3 games being streamed on Twitch instead of just conversations and interviews. It's going to look like basically collaboration and community events in the metaverse. So I just wanted to kind of share that and share, like, that's kind of what we're building towards. We really want it to be kind of a fun, engaging platform. You know, when the Web3 Warriors vision, as is implied in the name, is a collective vision, right? So it's looking at the Web3 Warriors, which are all of these different people that are really kind of pushing the technology forward in their own way, whether that's 3D wearables, 3D builds in the metaverse, art, music, and different ways to use the technology. We've seen decentralized science, we've seen decentralized finance, of course, looking at the impacts of cryptocurrency on the global stage, which again, we'll be looking at today in the umbrella of fintech. So all this to say, you know, thank you to all of our listeners, to all of the guests, especially, who have made for some awesome conversations. I've heard from a lot of listeners who were not as into Web3 or are still not really into Web3, who have learned from the conversations that we've had. Some of them have even gone out and bought books from the guests that we've had on the show, which is awesome. So the way I look at it, you know, for even like one or two people getting that impact out of this show would be amazing, you know. So knowing that there's a pretty consistent group of listeners listeners on a monthly basis that are finding some value in this is enough to keep us going, So we're at episode 78. We're 33 episodes away from episode 111, which was kind of just like a target that we had in mind, that I had in mind, looking at, a minimum amount of episodes. But basically the hope from here until episode 111 is to really kind of see what we can do to try to push the limits and to try to activate in the metaverse. So with that, I also want to show briefly right here our little corner of the metaverse, one of the newer corners of the metaverse that we have. So this is actually on oncyber.io. They allow for pre-made builds that you can just come in and kind of plug in your NFTs and basically show off your NFTs as an NFT gallery. And so we'll be sharing the link to this NFT gallery in the description for today's podcast episode. And it's also going to be tying in with a plot we have in voxels, which I will also show here, which is going to be basically the headquarters in the metaverse, at least in the voxels metaverse, our first plot in the metaverse that we own. This is all on chain, so it's still under construction. You'll see we have 2 floors here. We've got the Krome World Gaming floor, which also has an NFT gallery. And then there's also the Web3 Warriors floor, which is still under construction. But the whole goal of the metaverse really is for collaboration and engagement and just finding a place to kind of congregate basically in the digital world. So a lot of that is under construction. So all this to say, Web3 Warriors is an ongoing project and it's always evolving. And we're just very grateful for all of the listeners and guests and supporters who have kind of helped us get this far already. And so, we've been getting a lot of great feedback and we're going to continue doing what we're doing. And yeah, just wanted to give that update. So with that, we'll jump over to Fintech and Web3 and really, how things are evolving and how I personally kind of see this change impacting the global finance space. So as I said, this kind of based on a conversation that I had at St. Lawrence College, a presentation I gave, but I was also able to speak with the students there, which was amazing. And really, it's just looking at, Web3 as part of the fintech umbrella and how are these moving pieces evolving and how are we going to be able to take advantage of this as individuals and as businesses, really. It was a business class that I was speaking to, so I tried to kind of take a business approach to this. Always important to say I do not consider myself to be a crypto expert. I definitely do not promote NFTs or Web3 from a perspective of getting rich quick, more so creating opportunities. And those opportunities are not guaranteed to yield immediate results. They're not guaranteed to even make you money. They could be other kind of opportunities, networking opportunities, educational opportunities, so definitely not about getting rich quick, but it is about the creator economy and really looking at Web3 and blockchain as a new layer of the creator economy and opening, again, new opportunities for those who choose to take part. So Web3 and creativity, I think Web3 is ushering in really a new era of digital commerce on this blockchain-based internet, essentially. And financial technology is basically going to kind of provide the rails for this fast-moving train, that we're basically all on. Some people are more aware of it than others, but fintech and Web3 are both fast-moving trains that continue to impact kind of how society does business, how different countries deal with each other, how they send money to each other, all this kind of stuff. So blockchain-friendly fintech companies have an opportunity to benefit immensely from the innovations around Web3 and peer-to-peer transactions globally, but more than anything, really providing a reliable on and off ramp from the crypto to fiat and fiat to crypto is critical for the evolution of Web3 and really the adoption of Web3. And so that's where the real connection between kind of fintech, the payment companies, and kind of crypto, which of course, again, is part of the fintech mosaic, if you will. But really, crypto alone cannot stand on its own, right? Basically, everyone who is in the crypto space at one point or another is needing to get that value realized in their own local fiat currency, at least for the time being. And I don't know that this vision of Bitcoin being the only world currency is ever going to come to fruition. I highly doubt it. I think that it will always be kind of a mode of value, right, and a way to send value around the world, which is awesome. But ultimately, you're still going to need to be able to translate that value into your own local currency. And that's where the fintech pieces kind of come into place. So remittance companies really benefit from international peer-to-peer payments on the blockchain. I would say they're the most kind of obvious benefactors of blockchain since its inception. Even going back to the blockchain or the Bitcoin white paper, it was very clear that this was one of the big opportunities here for blockchain finance. But more importantly for this show and for Web3 Warriors, we're always talking about the metaverse. The reality is that we don't know what the metaverse is even going to become, a year from now, let alone 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. How much adoption will there be? How many services will be offered in the metaverse? Will governments be embracing this idea of an always-on virtual space that they can then offer services in, that people can no longer have to go to their bureaucratic office and wait in line to get certain services done if they can actually get it done in the metaverse, and maybe have a little bit more of a personal connection and hopefully more security with the blockchain backing as well, kind of ensuring accountability and transparency. So all this to say, the possibilities in the metaverse are really endless, and we don't even know, where it's going to go. But all we know is that the NFTs and being able to buy and sell NFTs in the metaverse are really kind of revolutionizing what's possible on the internet more broadly. So there's a brief history of blockchain. We don't have to get too far into this, but just looking at this timeline, right? From the early 90s, late 80s, talking about, blockchain cryptographic currencies as a concept, and then Satoshi Nakamoto releases the white paper in 2009. The first 10,000 Bitcoin purchases take place in 2010, and then Ethereum coming through with the Ethereum white paper in 2013, which introduced kind of programmability on the blockchain, which led to, of course, decentralized applications that resulted from Ethereum's innovation. And so now we're seeing, of course, DeFi and NFTs really kind of taking that programmability of blockchain-based cryptocurrencies to this next level, and utilizing this for NFTs, for art collection, for music, for digital assets in the metaverse, as I just mentioned. So it's quite the last, 10, 15 years of evolution. And, governments are just catching up now. I think a lot of society is slowly catching on. I jumped in that 2020, 2021 wave of NFTs and crypto adoption. And really, I keep saying it, the metaverse is what's kept me here. The culture of the people in the space is what's kept me here. If it was just about making gains and making money, I probably would have left the space a couple years ago, or even a year ago, along with many others who got burnt and just didn't get the kind of financial returns that they were hoping for. But the educational returns and the kind of look at the future of what's possible has been very rewarding for me. And I think that there's a lot of others who are still in the space because they believe in the technology and they believe in kind of the promise of what's around the corner, with decentralized technology. So I do jump into a few different definitions. For those who don't know, again, this is my perspective based on some research and a bunch of time in this space, but I'm always open to anyone else's thoughts and perspective as well. So Web3 being defined as a new decentralized blockchain-based online ecosystem that's revolutionizing international commerce, streamlining the supply chain, and providing a financial backbone for the metaverse, specifically the Web3 metaverse. As we know, the digital space has existed long before Web3, and many would say that it doesn't need the blockchain. So that's a whole other conversation. If you're looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint, you could say Web 1 was kind of the information age, was the age of really the internet basically being born and everyone having all of the data from history, of human history, at the tip of their fingers, right? So that was a huge kind of evolutionary jump for humans who could get on the internet, basically, which at that time was a much lower amount than it is today, which pretty much everyone can get on the internet these days with a mobile phone. Almost everyone, I should say. Web 2 was kind of the social media age, which we are definitely still in as we transition to Web 3. But, the social media age, I think, is mired by the lack of respect for individual data, the lack of understanding our own value on the internet, basically, right? So we all kind of rush to Facebook, rush to Instagram, Twitter, all these others. Even Clubhouse just came out with a big new update that a lot of people are complaining about the way that they're handling data, rightfully so, probably. But ultimately, all of these Web2 social media entities have taken for granted our data, have basically monetized our data to the nth degree. And many people, most people, have no idea what that even means or why they should care. And maybe they shouldn't. If they think that the social media platform is a tool and it's worth it and they're okay giving up that data, then, power to them. But it's my hope that Web3 is going to be ushering in a new era of data sovereignty as well. And so the hope is that, those kind of Web2 business practices, this kind of data vampires, as I've sometimes called them, but it's kind of a dramatic way of describing them. But the goal is to hopefully get away from all of this kind of pilfering of data unimpeded, right? And instead actually understand what part of your data is being used. What can you actually refuse to allow a social media platform to use from your data, Hopefully we get to that place. And the way we could get to that place through Web3 is actually having all of that data on chain and being fully aware of how that data is being used by different entities that you sign on with when you allow them to, be installed and be used on your phone or your other devices. So just an interesting conversation on the data side, but we'll see what happens. But yes, we are still evolving into Web3. We're not quite there yet. So when you hear people talk about Web 4 or Web 5, my theory is that they're basically wanting to scrub Web3 and just kind of leap step over it and not actually have to do the necessary evolutionary changes that Web3 demands, which is full autonomy, both financially and from a data perspective on the internet, right? So being able to have that real world value in your sovereign digital wallet on the internet is huge, and I don't think we've passed Web3 until everybody understands how huge that is, until everyone has a Web3 wallet, the same way everyone right now has a Facebook account, right? So until that's happened, we definitely are not at Web 4 or Web 5. So for those that are out there talking about Web 4 and Web 5, I would recommend just ignoring them, but, to each their own. Looking at the blockchain, a decentralized digital database that is distributed among the nodes of a network, secured by a strong mechanism such as proof of work or proof of stake, built to guarantee the fidelity and security of records without the need for a trusted central party. This is also known as distributed ledger technology, but Bitcoin was really the first to combine this with cryptography for the purposes of creating a global cryptocurrency that is not reliant on any one central governing body, but is actually, being given value by its network effect. And, it's now got a network effect so prolific, so decentralized in every corner of the world that I believe no matter how much governments actually want to take opposition to it, which we've seen, China, Russia to a lesser extent, some other countries have been very much like Bitcoin is illegal, and that hasn't really worked, right? We've seen, and now we have Hong Kong basically leading the digital asset kind of token conversation, despite technically being part of China. It's very interesting to see how these things are impacting geopolitics. But all this to say, Bitcoin is now, I believe, so decentralized that it cannot be controlled or shut down by any government. And anybody can basically use Bitcoin, especially on the Litecoin network, to basically send transactions, send money around the world for very, very minimal cost and very, very high speed. So that's the future. Now, with smart contracts and programmability from Ethereum, that same decentralized network, I would say Ethereum almost as decentralized as Bitcoin at this point, although of course, they have a central kind of Ethereum foundation body, and there are many more points of centralization, and then they switched from proof of work to proof of stake. So the argument could be made that they are much more centralized now than they were under proof of work. But this is getting a little too wonky for this presentation, for this conversation. So all this to say, Ethereum is also, I would say, sufficiently decentralized, but also they're the ones that kind of brought in programmability, which allowed for NFTs in the metaverse, for example, that now, these digital assets that gaming companies have been making money hand over fist on for many, many years, right, are now can be actually given to the creator. So those same people that were working for those gaming companies, making, whatever hourly wage they were making, often working extreme hours to, meet the demands of those gaming companies, can now actually take those skills into their own hands, can team up as a group of creators, builders, and create their own game wherein the digital assets can actually live on forever on the blockchain and can be traded, and the original creators can get a much larger portion of their revenue from the digital assets that are sold and traded. And the people that buy the digital assets can actually take part in the economy too, because they can trade it with other people. So this is the future that we're going to see, and it is because of blockchain, it is because of Bitcoin, and Ethereum was kind of that next step. And now, of course, we have Solana, we have Tezos. Solana especially has really been leaning into kind of the gaming space and trying to emphasize their benefits for the gaming space. Surprisingly, Visa actually just partnered with Solana as well for their own kind of on-chain payments system, which I have to look into a little bit more further before I could speak on with any authority, but does sound pretty interesting. And I thought it was pretty interesting that they decided to go with Solana instead of maybe a Polygon or some of these other chains that promise faster, lower transaction costs and faster speeds. But Solana is a layer one, and maybe that had something to do with it, their own blockchain. So yeah, another interesting piece there, just bringing that up. We'll see what Visa does there, but this is all part of the conversation of how fintech and Web3 and blockchain are all kind of integrating slowly and again, revolutionizing global finance as we move into this new era. So non-fungible tokens, the digital assets that can be connected to art, music, video, etc., stored on the decentralized blockchain using cryptography to ensure the verifiability of both the creator and the owner into the future. And for every new owner, you see the people that sold it, the whole chain of transactions is all immutable, is all on-chain, transparent, accountable for anyone to go see. And so this is the future of commerce, really, that new layer of accountability. And that's what a lot of people are scared of, and many would say that's what authoritarian governments especially are concerned about, because they're known to manipulate their currency. They're known to have economic systems that are not necessarily transparent or accountable, And I think that it's interesting if you want to take it to a kind of ideological place, right? You could say it's a real kind of perfection of capitalism in many ways, whereas the capitalists always, lauded the free market, right? And so what is more free than a completely transparent market on chain that everyone can see, every other transaction that happens? I mean, it's pretty fascinating. And again, importantly, that free market is now brought to the global level where I can now buy something from a friend in Ghana, a friend in India, all over the world. It's a really exciting new space that we're getting into here, thanks to NFTs and programmable blockchain especially. So special kudos to Ethereum and many others who have followed their kind of lead when it comes to the programmability on the blockchain. So the metaverse, as I mentioned, an immersive digital extension of reality built using 3D renderings of lifelike spaces on the internet. In the Web3 metaverse, each asset is an immutable NFT that can be easily traded and sold for real-world value. This could include land, buildings, clothing, really anything you can imagine in the digital world. So, of course, this concept has existed in video games for many years, with online communities using avatars. But Web3 technology, again, is really just bringing this to a new level of ownership, a new level of possibility with the creator, really taking on kind of a no holds barred approach to creativity, and really doing whatever they as a creator team might decide and what their collectors want to see, their community, I should say, their supporters, what they want to see, The one thing I do have to say about the metaverse, and it's really unfortunate, if you look at the chart I have on the screen here, this was going back to 2020, and they were projecting, 40% annual growth in the metaverse market. Now, I think it's pretty fair to say that has not been consistent, and that there has not been a pretty, steady incline. And in fact, there's been a bit of a dip in the metaverse market. And I think a lot of that has to do with speculation. You can look at whether it's the other side plots, that's the metaverse that Yuga Labs is building out with the Bored Ape brand behind it. So of course it's going to have a lot of heavy intrigue, right? And so they released these plots of land before the actual metaverse was available, and it's still not really fully available, although they have, beta and they've done test runs, and it does look pretty impressive, I will say. But I think there's a serious problem with releasing plots of land on land that cannot not be experienced yet, right? And because it was connected to Yuga Labs and the Bored Apes project, these plots of land went up in value insanely, like tens of thousands of dollars when they first were released, and all kinds of speculation. So people are buying them. And then, now 6 months later, or however long it is now, they're not worth tens of thousands. I'm pretty sure you can get one for like $1,000, or I'm not even sure what the floor price on them is now. All this to say, that type of, people getting soaked, basically, like spending tens of thousands only to have that investment see no value because you can't actually go into the metaverse yet, and to be decreasing steadily in what is the perceived value on the marketplace. And the NFTs, of course, can discourage many people. And the same thing has happened in other metaverse plots as well, Sandbox and others that are less than fully available. And that's been a huge problem for the metaverse, the speculation in the space. I'm hoping that, people are learning their lesson. And, I love the Voxels metaverse, which I was showing earlier. It's been purely available and actually on chain since its inception. And we've had a lot of really great parties in the metaverse there with the community from Clubhouse. So that's one that's available. Another one we've spoken with and talked to people that are creating in it is the Decentraland metaverse, right? And they're also available. They've been fully available, fully on chain, and also very impressive. I would say Decentraland is a little bit higher tier as far as quality, a little bit better 3D quality than Voxels, but Voxels has the accessibility piece really locked down, which is to say you can get on it from your phone. It's always smooth. It's never super clunky because it's Voxels based, right? So it's kind of like a Minecraft style game. So those are two metaverse projects that I would definitely give big kudos to, both Voxels and Decentraland, on chain, really doing it for the right reasons. And I know there are others. Spatial is another really cool one, although not a full kind of door-to-door metaverse where you can walk around the whole community and see different plots. It's more of like a specialized individual metaverse space that you can create, but they do definitely incorporate NFTs, and they definitely have some cool on-chain elements. So I'll give a shout out to Spatial as well. So just a little bit about the metaverse space and what we're seeing, but hopefully the speculation will decrease as metaverse projects evolve and become more accessible. So looking at kind of where is this leading? What are some potential spaces? And of course, I did give this presentation to more of a business perspective. So I always wanted to talk about the different verticals, right? The different kind of industries that are really kind of pushing Web3 forward, and are also going to be obviously huge opportunities for anyone in the entrepreneurial space looking to get into business, right? So you have remittances, as I mentioned, sending money abroad, receiving money from abroad. That's like number one business case for blockchain and crypto, I would say. Then you have the exchanges, which are, some would say, a necessary evil, a necessary point of centralization, which is where you actually are going to get your cryptocurrency from, and also where you might do trades and things like that for those who want to be in the real, financial side of crypto and want to be day traders. Exchanges, in a sense, offer that opportunity. There's also, DeFi businesses that really get nitty gritty with it, and you can do even more kind of nuanced trading. So exchanges, crypto exchanges are a huge vertical. And then Web3 projects more broadly is everything we've been discussing here. So, NFT, different platforms that are really focused on maybe specific niche communities. I'd love to see more and more kind of like cultural NFT platforms, like maybe West African NFT platform, South American, Indigenous, Canadian, all this kind of, I'm hoping we see a little bit more of that, a little bit more kind of speaking to the culture. Like if I want to help artists in West Africa, it would be awesome to be able to go to like one platform and have all of those artists from that region there highlighted, and you could support it, for example. So this would fall under kind of a Web3 project. Of course, any metaverse project also falls under a Web3 project. So that's a huge area where they're seeing, likely projected growth. So right now it's about 3.2 billion US dollars worth of value in market size, but they're projecting it to go up to about 82 billion or 81.5 billion by 2030. And that's just from Emergent Research. On the crypto exchanges, it's currently about 829 billion annually in value, but that's down from about 64% more, which was about 1 trillion back in 2022 or early 2022. So it's kind of interesting how crypto exchanges have taken a pretty big hit over the last year or two. And then remittances, of course, is an ongoing, never going to be disappearing kind of marketplace. But just a few different industries that are definitely being impacted by Web3 and the blockchain, and just cool places to look at as we go forward. And I like to just, do a little bit of looking into the future and thinking about how things are going to change. Definitely no guarantees. But as of right now, in 2023, we're seeing a lot of talk around these Bitcoin ETFs. And I think ARK Invest actually just applied for an Ethereum ETF. So this is in America. I don't actually remember what the acronym ETF stands for, but I should know. Some equity traded funds. I don't know. I have to double check that. But basically, it's kind of like a mutual fund, but it's an equity fund held by a central party, so BlackRock or JP Morgan, for example, basically holding Bitcoin and allowing you to invest in it without actually holding Bitcoin in your own wallet. So in the blockchain space, we have a saying called "not your keys, not your crypto." So for those who don't care about that perspective, the ETF is an interesting kind of quote unquote safe option for investing, where you can maybe invest it with the rest of your portfolio through your typical kind of stock exchange access, if you have that, if you're one of those investors who's able to do that. And there are some benefits, maybe if you just want to let Bitcoin play a role in your investment portfolio and you don't actually want to own Bitcoin, as a sovereign holder, then power to you. So a lot of people are saying that once these ETFs get approved, which they have not been in America yet, this is going to really boost the value of Bitcoin and probably usher in the next bull run. I'm not sure I agree, but we'll see what happens. Here in Canada, we actually have Bitcoin ETFs, and we have had them for, I think, about 2 years or maybe more. Same with Ethereum ETFs. So that's already an option for us. And we actually have a lot of really interesting crypto regulations. It's kind of funny, people sleep on Canada, but it's an interesting space to look at if you want to think about some kind of actual positive security measures and regulations, which are always going to be necessary, and how they can actually help push innovation forward and not always be, kind of stifling innovation, as regulations are often known to do. We also saw Starbucks kind of leading the way on the loyalty program side of things, using Polygon to have on-chain loyalty program that is also going to have a metaverse component, which I don't believe they fully rolled out yet. But as you can imagine, play certain games in the metaverse, get these little points that are Starbucks points that are actually on chain on Polygon. As you collect a certain amount, maybe you can go into the store and get a free drink. You'll definitely be able to order your coffee from in the metaverse and go pick it up at the store, those kind of things. So there's really no limits to where this is going to go. And I think you're going to see a lot more Starbucks like loyalty programs out there into the future. So looking at next year, 2024, I think, we're going to see a lot more Web3 games and metaverse spaces becoming more popular, and not just for any financial reason, but actually just becoming more fun. And that's more important, right? I think that's what I'm hoping to see by next year and into the future. I think that NFTs, this has already started, but it's going to be even more so as we evolve, are kind of being demystified, right? So the hope is that there would be less FOMO, which is to say fear of missing out, because I think the FOMO has not been very healthy for the space. I think the idea of, this is going to go up 10x and you really got to buy in on this now or you're going to miss this opportunity has really been toxic generally for the space, although, people can say what you want about its economic impacts. And I think that once the bull run comes back around, I'm sure there will still be much FOMO and all that kind of conversation. But the hope is that as knowledge of the power of NFTs, of kind of the technology really outpacing the speculation, essentially, they would become more demystified, and there would be a better understanding of how they can be used for different entrepreneurs, for different creators. And so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, and the investor class, as I mentioned, kind of leading Bitcoin adoption for, what some might call quote unquote normies. Your average investor, your average retail investor out there might be interested in what the investor class says. And when they say, Bitcoin is actually great, maybe they'll all come rushing. We'll see. We also have the halvening happening next year, which is a very important kind of piece of evolution for Bitcoin. So that means that the actual Bitcoin being paid out cuts in half as of next spring time-ish. It's going to be around March or April next year. And this happens I'm not even sure how many years now. I think, anyway, it's all programmed into Bitcoin. But basically, we know that next year in springtime, there's going to be the halving. And so basically the amount of Bitcoin paid out to the miners is going to be cut in half, which ultimately leads to some miners probably just giving up on mining. But those that stay are, in it to win it. And generally the system kind of has an interesting reaction, which almost always within, 3 to 6 months of the halving ends up leading to a big boost in Bitcoin. But we'll see. Definitely not financial advice. And again, I'm not here to give any get rich quick or any get rich advice, that's for sure. So we'll see. Hopefully the crypto regulations continue to evolve and actually become more clearer and more pro innovation, which on the Canadian side, I like to think on, across different parties, there are a lot of people who see the value of Web3 and blockchain and crypto as an innovation tool, as a tool to empower creators, entrepreneurs. So that's our perspective from my reading of it anyway. And we've had like very recent kind of parliamentary committee meetings on it. And again, like the importance of a sovereign wallet, for example, was stated in there. There's been a lot of really good kind of pro-innovation conversation. So without putting the cart ahead of the horse, because we haven't seen the final policies coming out. But so far, I'm pretty happy with at least the Canadian government's perspective on really Web3 and blockchain evolution. Now, I cannot say the same for America, where there are definitely, especially I see among kind of the elder states people of Congress, a real hesitant to even embrace crypto or accept its innovation. And there are definitely a lot of people that just are doing the bidding of the banking industry that just doesn't want the competition, right? Nobody can deny that. But in Canada, I see it as a much more kind of favorable environment, understanding the security risks, which are always there in any financial, conversation and any financial fintech evolution. Security is always an important piece of it. But understanding that is the main need for regulation is around security, but it should not hamper innovation, and it definitely should not be taking kind of an adversarial approach to the evolution of this technology, which undoubtedly can help society and can create economic growth, most importantly. So now looking further into 2025, I'm hoping that we see a really lucrative Web3 metaverse space popping up, and I think that is not defined by, your typical markets. It's not defined by how popular it is on the media or anything like that, but it's actually defined by people like us, builders in the space, who just see the value in the technology and congregate in the metaverse more and more and actually build really cool projects based on, what we come up with, collaborating in the metaverse, in the digital space. And I should add, that's not just the 3D metaverse. That includes collaborating maybe in Twitter Spaces, which is still part of the digital space. It includes collaborating on Clubhouse. As long as the conversation is about how we're pushing the technology forward and how we're kind of supporting each other's Web3 projects, I don't think any metaverse is off limits for that conversation, right? So this is just a little bit of how I see the path forward kind of evolving. Again, these loyalty programs are going to be interesting to watch, how kind of the major corporations take their bite of this Web3 kind of cake. But that's a bit of it. It's really the full breakdown of our presentation. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you learned a little bit of something from that breakdown of fintech and Web3 and kind of where we're at right now in the evolution of global finance. Seeing no questions in the chat, I just want to thank those of you who are hanging out with me, listening to this conversation, and hopefully you learned a little bit about, again, where things are going. I think that fintech is an interesting space, and I really think everyone should take a look at it, especially those of you who have been kind of head down in this Web3 blockchain metaverse space. Take a look at the broader fintech space and take a look at how payments are evolving. Take a look at how the regulations in Canada, it's FinTrack. In America, it's FinCEN. Look at how they're kind of dealing with crypto companies. Look at how they're dealing with Web3 and metaverse companies. And it's really just, there's no silver bullet. There's no guarantee that this is all going to pan out for the best way. I hope that it does. I hope that governments see the economic value of Web3 and continue to allow it to kind of evolve and don't take kind of the adversarial approach that we're seeing kind of coming out of the SEC in America, which is plainly, wanting to help the banks and the typical kind of industry, TradFi, if you will, just have their as big a piece of this new kind of pie that's coming up as they can possibly have. That's what it seems like to me. And I think that a lot of others in this blockchain space are reading it the same way. And, hopefully we can kind of evolve together and come out the other side with an awesome kind of new landscape for financial technology, for commerce, for the creator economy, and for those of us living and breathing the digital space, and really wanting to achieve new opportunities in the digital space and continue to collaborate and create. So with all that, I will get off my soapbox here. I appreciate you for listening, and please do check out our metaverse space. We'll be dropping the links for that in the descriptions. And until next time, we'll be live with a guest next week for sure. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you again for hanging out with us. Till next week, we'll catch you in the metaverse. Peace out.